This is the Oz report for July 13th, 2025, and it's going to be the last one from Australia. In 2 weeks' time, we're going to be back in Germany. Looking forward to being in a normal time zone again. And also, just a PSA, next week there's not going to be an Oz report as I'll be packing and flying. Let's start by looking at the impact that the global Plex market has had. All right, and we're going to do that in the game client. Unfortunately, as we just discussed on stream, the history is gone. All right, so now if you're looking at Plex history, the way that CCP had to do it was they implemented a new region, the global region. Plex being the only item in there, and so now we don't have a trade history. But what we are seeing is prices around 6 million. So they regulated immediately following the implementation of the new global Plex market earlier this week. So we're at very normal pricing. There hasn't been a huge a breakout in either direction, and the volume is back up to pretty normal levels again. We're talking about 1 million units a day. That's about 6 trillion in volume, and that, you know, that's close to where we were before. And clearly, it's still increasing every day. We're hitting the weekend now, so this is where it's going to settle in. And all in all, the implementation went through without huge glitches, and I think everyone's gotten used to it. Yes, there are some limitations that we've discussed in the past with citadels and ACLs, etc., but overall, I think a global Plex market is here as a good way to test these things, and I'm sure there's going to be iterations on this. There might be other items that are considered for this as well. I think skill extractors, for example, could also fall in this category without knowing any details there. But the argument could be made that Plex adjacent items all fall into this category. But Plex is great. The way it has, I think, the hope was that the price would drop a little bit. It didn't, as I predicted, because I think the change to before isn't that massive. And as long as Plex can be traded by contracts, for example, a lot of those trades are going to happen by contract because people are dodging taxes. Selling Plex on the market is extremely expensive from a tax perspective, especially if you've just paid real cash for the Plex. And so there are several intricacies that still have to be worked through in that market for it to be a truly global market where all the Plex are being traded, right? Hypercores are... Oh no, I have to do this every time. I have to actually reset the reset the length of the market period. Hypercores we haven't talked about in a while. I'm just mentioning them because we were just talking about them on stream. They had this massive 2-for-1 sale last October going on, right? And ever since then, the price for Hypercores just simply crashed. It went, it went down from, I don't know, 450,000 or so to 300,000. And ever since then, it's been working back a little bit, and there's a lot of capital tied up in Hypercores. Hypercores is still a very, very popular item, even though I don't agree with the HyperNet. It is, and a lot of people like it, and people buy a lot of Hypercores. And so, as I was saying earlier, if you squint, you can see a positive trend. And so possibly, if a lot of you are like me, holding a lot of these still, you're hoping for the market to recover at some point. Speaking of recovery, that is what we also hope. At least if you're a trader or a skill farmer, you probably hope for large skill injector prices to recover at some point. But if you're a player that is not dabbling in any of these activities, then you're very happy that large skill injectors are so cheap right now. I mean, 365 days ago to the day, we were talking 940 million skill injectors, and now you can buy a sell price of 789 million in Perimeter right now, and a buy price below 750 million. It's so very cheap because CCP has been running massive massive sales that have just pushed the price floor for skill farmers down and down, and their products, large scale injectors, can be produced much cheaper than it used to a year or two ago, and that's why we're in this very low region. If you are looking at the other side of that, which is skill extractors, which along with Plex is the big cost driver for skill injectors, you can see why skill injectors are so cheap. And that is another 2-for-1 sale that happened, in April, May, where the prices haven't recovered from either. So skill extractors also very cheap. 437 sell price right now in JITA. That is very cheap. And as long as those are so cheap, we're also not going to see a big recovery in large skill injectors. And the recovery has been sluggish on these as well. It's the result of CCP doing bolder and more massive sales that attract massive volume, and the player base is now trained to react to these. So if there's a 2-for-1 extractor sale or a 2-for-1 hypercore sale, most investors, most people with large capital, they jump on that. And the last series of these just overdid it, and now the market is saturated in a form where the prices aren't recovering, which I would argue, I'm affected by this, so, take this with a grain of salt, but I would also argue that it's a market destabilizing factor, because it's outside activities having massive impact on day-to-day value in the EVO 9 economy. And if you make these sales too extreme, then I think you're training your players to react in an unhealthy way. And so, overall, it's just going to take a long time to recover. But on both of those, I don't see that on the horizon yet. Right. Somebody asked in chat how skill injectors now compare to cerebral accelerators. We can actually have a look. If we go over here and down here, and I make this a little larger, then we can have a look at the Master at Arms cerebral accelerators, which are, very popular cerebral accelerators, are right now on sell price 1,800 ISK per SP, and a large skill injector, if you're between 5 and 50 million SP, which is, the range where you get 400,000 SP per skill injector, you're about 1,985. So right now, I don't think that tiny difference in ISK per SP warrants actually waiting for a cerebral accelerator. So under 50 million SP, I would argue that most people are just going to buy a skill injector, or should be buying skill injector, rather than messing with cerebral accelerator. It just starts making sense if you're over 50 million SP, because then you're seeing a significant about 50% price difference, price discount if you're using a cerebral accelerator. But overall, historically speaking, large skill injectors very cheap right now. And if you're a low SP character, then it's never been cheaper to inject skill points. Let me go back to my notes. We're going to be talking about Obelisk, right? If we're looking at what's trending up, you can see Obelisk prices are up 30%. Lots of people moving right now in EVO 9, so that's highly relevant. We look at the Obelisk graph. Let's go here, trending up. You can see not only has the price in the last week significantly increased. If we go to the market availability, there's only 2 left. So there's literally just 2 Obelisks left in JITA to buy, or in the entire forge to buy, and that is very low. So the Obelisk this week is an item that is trending up, and it's been in very low availability. So if you have either an Obelisk sitting around, if you have the ability of producing these beautiful pumpkins, then actually go and do so, and you can do so likely very profitably right now because the availability is not given. The spread between a buy order and a sell order is just massive right now, right? I might have one or two of these sitting around. I might I might actually throw them on the market for you guys, for me to make money and for you guys to have pumpkins. Next we have something like I think up until yesterday, trigger units were also something that was basically gone from the market. So if we look at trigger units right here, trigger unit prices are up 11% this week, but also trigger unit availability, and this is salvage good, is about 0.2. All right, 0.2 for a basic tier 2 salvage material like trigger unit is very, 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 very low. All right, I'll show you what that looks like on the graph. If we look at low availability items, trigger units, this has been the trigger unit pricing. We had the deep dive on salvage prices last week, where our friend Smash explained to us that you know, a lot of this salvage is used for structure rigs, and a lot of this depends on if there is a demand, the market isn't liquid enough oftentimes to fulfill the demand, because a lot of the large players are working ahead or creating stockpiles and trying to actively keep other people out of the market. And so when spikes like this occur, you know, it's definitely a function of, on the one hand, large industrialists trying to control the market, on the other hand, increased demand from a lot of people moving structures right now. And so just be aware that this is happening. Certainly right now, not a good time to buy trigger units. On the other hand, you know, if you have stockpiles of these lying around, like I often talk about, right? Because salvage is something that is very spiky and that you can absolutely buy when the prices are historically low. Then right now is a very, very good time to sell these, because the market is almost devoid of trigger units. And there are some other very interesting salvaging things going on, which is one reason why we had the special talk with Smash last week. If you want to catch that, it's out on YouTube as well. Let's see, what else happened? We got to talk about minerals real quick. So last week we talked about morphite and pyrite, because morphite and pyrite are the two minerals that have been impacted by patches recently. And just like last week, these are just not going the way that CCP wants them to go. All right. So morphite specifically dropped massively after the March patch, because CCP acknowledged, and the CSM agreed, that it was too expensive. It was impacting tier 2 and capital prices negatively. It dropped massively to below previous levels and previous supports. And in the last patch notes, CCP said that they actually they overdid the availability of morphite in the past, in the March patch, from the new sites, and they wanted to draw it back a little bit. Now, since then, the price hasn't really increased all that much. So if you look at, you know, these few weeks, you have, you know, a little bit of a spike and then it coming back down, maybe an overall trend if you squint, but not really, right? Now, if I take my CSM hat off for a second, right? Because as a CSM, I'm clearly in talks about this. But just from a market perspective, right? Just from an analysis perspective, if CCP tells you that they think they overdid it and the price doesn't change, one, that tells you that there's a ton of stockpiles out there, right? or that the change was too small. Those are the two opportunities or the two options. I'll let you decide which one it is, right? But clearly, in the long run, it seems as though the price should increase because the patch hasn't had an impact yet, right? So again, I don't know what's going to happen with Morphyte. I really don't. But clearly, this lower support that there is fairly strong if CCP is already saying we overdid it, right? And it hasn't dropped in price in the last month. So to me, if I were a neutral trader, I would probably buy some Morphyte right now because the chances are fairly good that you'll make a profit on it. All right? Now, Pyrite is the other one. Pyrite, opposite. I'm not gonna rehash the whole argument that I've talked about the last 2 weeks. But Pyrite, we had a patch that was intended to lower the Pyrite price. CCP explained this whole thing in the patch notes. Pyrite Pyrite being rare now because it's missing as a byproduct from Metanox moon mining. And here also initial drop, but since then not much has happened. So clearly this patch also didn't have a massive impact. And the same argument that I would use on Morphyte is for Pyrite as well. There's no way that I would be holding Pyrite in this situation because clearly CCP has already indicated that they agree that the Pyrite price is too high from what they have communicated in the patch notes, right? So if I would be buying Morphyte at the same token, I would be selling Pyrite right now, right? I'm just putting it out there for you guys to make your own decisions. But that is what I would do as a neutral trader, and it doesn't require any inside knowledge to make that assumption. All right. Now, the last item group I want to talk about today is net resonators. Okay, net resonators are used to buy to build faction ships. Okay. You use LP to buy these net resonators, and then you use them to build the faction ships of that faction that you've used the LP on. We've seen a lot of movement on these, and there's especially two. So if you look at, let's go back to our dashboard here. If you look at, for example, the Sancha net resonators are almost gone from the market. And we also saw the Serpentis net resonators drop in supply massively. Sancha and Serpentis, 50% supply drop and 80% supply drop. So people are jumping on these. People are buying up a lot of these. It's possible that this is alliances because they want to ensure they have enough resonators to build certain ships for their doctrines. That's one, yeah. And so if we're, Higherbrand is already jumping ahead of what I'm trying to get at. If we're looking at what's going on, then I'm going to jump back to the game client here. The Serpentis is used for the Daredevil, the Vigilant, and the Vindicator, and the Sanchas are used for the Nightmare, the Phantasm, and the Succubus. So, as Higherbrand writes in his comment, out of the Sancha ships, it's definitely the Nightmare, right? So if we look at the Nightmare pricing in the game client here, then you can definitely see that uptick, right? And you can definitely see where those resonators are going. On the other hand, if we're looking at the Serpentis faction, the Daredevil, Vigilant, or Vindicator, then let's see here. I'm going to actually look at the net resonator and show you. So if you're wondering how to identify what they're used for, you can click on the information for them, and you can see which ships they go into, right? And if we look at the different pricing, you can see, for example, the Vindicator that Hyabrand is mentioning, dropping in price. So either somebody's building a lot and dumping them on the market, or we have the, let's see, we have the other one. I think the Vigilant is, you know, maybe not as prevalent. Seeing a little uptick, but you know, probably large industrialists buying up net resonators, and that should have a good positive impact on the LP prices for these. So certainly a large movement that I haven't seen in a longer time for these net resonators. My guess is on either large individual industrialists buying them up, or an alliance has decided to use them in doctrines. But have a look out for net resonators, and a very interesting market to be in, because it's a interplay between which ships are popular right now and LP prices, right? All right, and massive volume, right? These are all over 5 billion traded a day. So net resonator is definitely an interesting item that we haven't looked at as much on the show in the past. Okay. We're going to wrap up the Oz report here. That was the last Oz report from Australia. Next week, we're off, and then we're back from Germany. All right. So you guys have a fantastic 2 weeks. Let's call it a short summer break, and then we're going to return to the regular stream.